Captain Taman Park stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the massive space station grow larger on the main screen. Nexus Prime looked like a giant metal flower blooming in the darkness of space. Its silver petals stretched out for miles, each one bigger than Earth's largest cities. Lights blinked along its surface like stars, and ships moved around it like tiny insects. "First time seeing the Galactic Council's home base?" asked Ambassador So Young Kim as she joined him at the viewing window. Her diplomatic uniform was crisp and clean, but Tae-min could see the nervousness in her eyes. "First time for all of us," Tae-min replied. "Hard to believe there are 847 different alien species living and working in there." So Young nodded. "And we're about to become number 848, if everything goes well." Behind them, the rest of the human delegation was getting ready for the most important meeting in Earth's history. Woo Jin Lee, their best scientist who studied alien life, was checking his data tablets one more time. Hana Cho, their military advisor, was reviewing security protocols even though no weapons were allowed on the station. Jin Ho Kwan, who knew more languages than anyone else on Earth, was practicing alien greeting customs. The New Horizon docked with a soft bump that barely moved the ship. Taemin had trained for this moment for 2 years, but his heart was still beating fast. Humanity had been sending radio signals into space for over a century. 3 months ago, someone finally answered back. The aliens who responded called themselves the Galactic Council. They said Earth's people could join their big alliance if they passed some tests. It sounded simple enough, but Taemin knew nothing about space politics was ever simple. "Docking complete, Captain," reported his navigation officer. "The station is sending us directions to the diplomatic sector." "Thank you, Lieutenant. Send word to Earth that we've arrived safely." The human delegation walked through the station's corridors with wide eyes. The walls were made of some kind of metal that changed colors as they walked past. The ceiling was so high they could barely see it, and creatures Taemin had never imagined walked, crawled, and floated past them. A being that looked like a walking tree guided them to the council chambers. It spoke through a translation device that turned its rustling sounds into perfect Korean. "Welcome, Sol 3 inhabitants. Chancellor Vorthak will see you shortly." "Sol 3 inhabitants?" whispered Woo Jin. "That's what they're calling us?" "Better than those weird primates from the edge of nowhere," Hana muttered back. The council chamber was enormous. Hundreds of different aliens sat in curved rows that went up and up like a stadium. Some breathed air like humans. Others lived in water tanks or gas bubbles. In the center sat Chancellor Vorthak, a creature that looked like it was made of living crystal. Its voice echoed through the chamber when it spoke. "Sol 3 inhabitants, you have requested membership in our council. This is unusual. Most species wait for us to contact them when they are ready." So Young stepped forward. "Honored Chancellor, we call ourselves humans, and our world is called Earth. We believe we are ready to join the galactic community." The Chancellor's crystal body flashed different colors. "Humans, Earth. These names mean nothing to us. You come from an unremarkable yellow star system on the outer edge of the galaxy. What makes you think you belong among civilized species?" Taemin felt his jaw tighten, but So Young remained calm. "We have achieved space travel. We have learned to live in peace on our world. We have art, science, and culture to share." "Peace?" The Chancellor made a sound like breaking glass, which the translator said was laughter. "Your history shows constant warfare. Your species fights over everything: land, resources, ideas, even the color of your skin." "We have learned from our mistakes," So Young replied. "Our wars taught us the value of peace." While the adults talked politics, Jinho was looking around the chamber with different eyes. As a language expert, he noticed things others missed. The symbols on the walls were very old, much older than the current council. Some of them looked familiar, but he couldn't place where he'd seen them before. During a break in the formal meeting, Jinho approached a smaller alien who seemed to be taking notes. It looked like a cross between a bird and a lizard with bright green feathers and intelligent yellow eyes. "Excuse me," Jinho said through his translator. "I'm studying the history of this place. Could you tell me about those old symbols on the walls?" The bird lizard creature tilted its head. "You can read ancient script? Most species cannot. Those symbols are from the early days of the council, over 50,000 of your years ago. Much of their meaning has been lost. Could I perhaps look at some historical records? I'm very interested in old languages." The creature's feathers ruffled in what might have been surprise. "I am Thiska, keeper of the archives." "It has been Many cycles since anyone requested access to the deep records. Most species find ancient history boring. I find it fascinating. Languages can tell us so much about who we were and who we might become. Back in the main chamber, Chancellor Vorthak was explaining the membership process. Your species must prove it can contribute to galactic civilization. We will evaluate your technology, your culture, your ability to coexist with others. This process typically takes several rotations of your world around its star. We understand, So Young said. We're prepared to wait and prove ourselves. The Chancellor's crystals flashed again. You may begin by sharing your cultural achievements. Show us what makes your species unique. Wu Jin stepped forward with his data files. We've brought examples of our art, music, literature, and scientific discoveries. We hope you'll find them interesting. As the formal session ended, the human delegation was given quarters on the station. They would live here for months while the council decided their fate. That night, as Taimin looked out his window at the stars, he felt both excited and worried. What do you think, Captain? So Young asked as she joined him. I think they see us as primitives who got lucky with space travel, Taimin replied. But maybe that's okay. Let them underestimate us. Meanwhile, Jinho was in his room looking through the first batch of historical files Thiska had given him. Most of it was routine stuff about trade agreements and territorial disputes. But buried in the middle of a shipping manifest from 30,000 years ago, he found something strange. A single line that made his blood run cold. Monitoring stations around Keth Mori Shatar remain active. The nameless ones show no signs of activity. Jinho didn't know what Keth Mori Shatar meant, but something about those words felt familiar. And the nameless ones, and that sounded like a species name. But why would a species have no name? He made a note to ask Thiska about it tomorrow. For now he tried to sleep, not knowing he had just found the first clue to humanity's true place in galactic history. 3 weeks had passed since the humans arrived at Nexus Prime. Jinho spent most of his days in the archives with Thiska, digging through old records that most aliens found too boring to read. The bird-like alien had become his friend, always eager to help translate ancient texts that had been forgotten for thousands of years. This phrase keeps appearing, Jinho said, pointing at his tablet screen. The nameless ones. But every time it shows up, there are missing files around it. Like someone went through and deleted specific information. Thiska's feathers rustled nervously. That is unusual. The council keeps very detailed records. We rarely delete anything, even embarrassing mistakes. And look at this, Jinho continued. References to a species that lived on the world that burns in the void. That doesn't sound like a normal planet description. Meanwhile, Wu Jin was having his own strange experiences. The council had asked him to share human culture with different alien species, and the results were not what anyone expected. He was currently sitting across from Ambassador Zephys, a tall gray alien with large black eyes who represented the Kithara Collective. Tell me more about these horror movies, Zephys said, leaning forward with obvious interest. Your species creates entertainment by showing terrible things happening to your own kind. Wu Jin nodded. It's a way to experience fear safely. We know it's not real, so we can enjoy the excitement without actual danger. Zephys was quiet for a long moment. My people find this disturbing but also fascinating. We have never thought of fear as something to enjoy. It's not really about enjoying fear, Wu Jin explained. It's about proving to ourselves that we can handle scary situations. Even when we're afraid, we keep watching. We don't give up. That night, Zephys requested copies of every human horror movie in the archives. His assistants thought he had developed some kind of mental illness. No sane Kithara would willingly expose themselves to frightening images. Dr. Mi Young Yoon was having similar conversations with other species. She had been asked to present human history to the Council's Education Committee. The alien delegates listened with growing unease as she described Earth's wars, natural disasters, and social struggles. Your species has survived so much suffering, said Counselor Vexna, a floating jellyfish-like creature. Most civilizations that face such hardships either destroy themselves or become permanently damaged. How do you remain optimistic? We learn from our mistakes, Mi Young replied. Each disaster teaches us something new. Each war shows us the cost of fighting. We use our pain to become stronger. The aliens exchanged worried glances. This concept made no sense to them. Suffering was supposed to break a species, not strengthen it. Yijin Nam, the mission's psychologist, started getting requests for private meetings from various alien delegates. They all wanted to understand the same thing. Why weren't humans broken by their terrible history? I keep having dreams about your war poetry, admitted Counselor Thane, a reptilian creature from the Draknor Empire. The way your soldiers write about finding beauty in battlefields. It should be impossible, but the words won't leave my mind. We've always believed that even in the darkest times there's something worth fighting for, Yijin explained. Maybe it's hope for the future. Maybe it's protecting someone you love. That belief helps us survive, Thane shook his head. My people would go insane trying to think that way. We see darkness as darkness. You see it as, what did your poet call it? The canvas on which heroes paint their stories. These strange reactions weren't isolated incidents. Across the station, aliens who had interacted with the human delegation were behaving oddly. A Zelithan diplomat started collecting human music about overcoming hardship. 3 different species requested information about human comedy, unable to understand how anyone could laugh at their own problems. Captain Taman noticed the changes during his daily reports to Earth. The aliens are acting strange around us, he told Admiral Kim back on Earth. They're fascinated and terrified at the same time. Terrified of what? Admiral Kim asked through the communication link. Of the way we think, I think. They can't understand how we stay positive after everything we've been through. Meanwhile, Jinho was making progress in the archives. Theiska had given him access to deeper, older files that required special permission to read. Most of them were in ancient languages that no living species could translate completely. I found something, Jinho told the others during their daily team meeting. It's not much, but it's something. There are references to a species that was sent away about 50,000 years ago. The records call them those who sing in darkness and the ones who find joy in hopelessness. That sounds like humans, Hana said with a dry laugh. We're probably the only species crazy enough to make up songs about how terrible things are and then sing them for fun. But here's the strange part, Jinho continued. These beings weren't destroyed. They were relocated. The records mention a suitable world for containment and monitoring stations to ensure compliance. Ambassador So Young frowned. Containment? That makes it sound like they were dangerous. Or maybe they were just different in a way that scared the other species, Wu Jin suggested. We've seen how uncomfortable our culture makes some of the aliens here. That evening, Thiska pulled Jinho aside in the archives. The bird-like alien looked nervous, constantly checking to make sure they were alone. I have been thinking about your research, Thiska said quietly. There are rumors among the archive keepers. Old stories passed down through generations. They say there was once a species so psychologically resilient that other civilizations feared them. Feared them why? Because they could survive anything. Any disaster, any tragedy, any hopeless situation. They would not only survive but find ways to thrive. Other species began to worry that this resilience might be infectious. Jinho felt a chill run down his spine. What happened to them? The stories say they were sent to the harshest world the Council could find. A planet so dangerous that survival would be impossible. It was meant to be merciful, a quick end rather than execution. But what if they didn't die? Jinho asked. Thiska's feathers fluffed up nervously. Then they would have adapted to conditions that would destroy any other species. They would have become something unprecedented in galactic history. That night, Jinho couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Earth, a world of earthquakes, hurricanes, ice ages, mass extinctions, and deadly predators. A world where humans had learned to find beauty in storms, hope in disasters, and strength in suffering. He thought about the monitoring stations Earth's astronomers had detected around their solar system. Stations that had been there so long they were considered natural phenomena. Stations that might have been placed there 50,000 years ago to watch for signs of life on a world that was supposed to kill everything sent. There, as he finally drifted off to sleep, Jinho had one last thought. What if humanity wasn't trying to join the Galactic Council for the first time? What if they were coming home? Jinho's breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning, Galactic Standard Time. He had been working with Thiska for 5 weeks now, and the alien archivist had finally gotten permission to show him the deepest records, files so old that most council members had forgotten they existed. These documents are from the founding era of the council, Thaiska explained as they walked through a section of the archives that felt more like an ancient tomb than a library. Some of the languages are so old that we can only guess at their meaning. The room they entered was circular, with walls covered in storage devices that hummed with age. At the center stood a single reading station that looked like it had been built for someone much taller than either human or Cathara. The original council members were giants, Thaiska said, noticing Jinho's stare. They all died out long ago. We kept their equipment out of respect. Jinho climbed up to the reading station and began going through files that hadn't been opened in thousands of years. Most of it was routine administrative work, supply lists, meeting notes, territorial agreements. But buried in the middle of a file labeled Relocation Projects Classified, he found what he was looking for. Thaiska, look at this, Jinho called out, his voice echoing in the ancient chamber. The document was written in 3 different ancient languages, but Jinho could make out enough to understand its meaning. It was a formal order, signed by the original Council of 12, authorizing the relocation of a species designated as Keth Mori Shatar. That phrase again, Jinho muttered. What does it mean? Thaiska studied the symbols carefully. The first part, Keth Mori, appears to mean forge or place of making. The second part, Shatar, is more difficult. It could mean unbreakable or those who cannot be broken. Jinho felt his heart skip a beat. The forge of the unbreakable? It would seem so. But look at this additional note. Thaiska pointed to a smaller section of text. It says they were not destroyed because their nature might prove useful in future emergencies. Instead, they were to be contained on the designated death world until needed. The death world was described in clinical terms that made Jinho's skin crawl. Extreme temperature variations, massive tectonic activity, frequent asteroid impacts, aggressive predator species, poisonous atmosphere requiring biological adaptation, multiple mass extinction events predicted. They sent them to a world designed to kill them, Jinho whispered. And according to this, Thaiska added, they placed monitoring stations around the system to watch for signs of survival. The expectation was complete extinction within 10,000 rotations. Jinho was about to respond when his communication device buzzed. It was an urgent message from Earth, marked with the highest security codes. I have to take this, he told Thaiska, stepping away from the reading station. The message was from Dr. Jae-sung Ryu, Earth's leading expert on space phenomena. His face appeared on the small screen, looking worried and excited at the same time. Jinho, I hope you're sitting down. We've been analyzing those strange objects our telescopes have been tracking around the solar system. The ones we thought were asteroids. They're not natural. Jinho's hands started shaking. What are they? Monitoring stations. Ancient ones built with technology we don't recognize. They're positioned in a perfect observation grid around Earth, and they're all aimed inward. They've been watching us for, we estimate, at least 40 to 50,000 years. The screen went dark as the message ended. Jinho stared at it for a long moment, his mind racing. 50,000 years. That matched the timeline in the ancient documents perfectly. Bad news from home? Thaiska asked. The opposite, I think. Thaiska, I need to see everything you have about the Keth Mori Shatar, everything. Over the next 3 days, Jinho and Thaiska worked around the clock, piecing together fragments of humanity's true history. The picture that emerged was both terrifying and amazing. The beings called Keth Mori Shatar had not been conquered enemies or defeated rivals. They had been council members, respected and valued for their unique psychological traits. But their ability to find hope in hopeless situations and strength in suffering had frightened the other species. Look at this incident report, Thaiska said, showing Jinho a document about a plague that had swept through council space 51,000 years ago. When other species despaired and gave up fighting the disease, the Keth Mori Shatar organized relief efforts. They turned disaster into opportunity, using the crisis to develop new medical techniques. Another report described their response to a massive invasion by hostile aliens from outside the galaxy. While other council species retreated in fear, the Keth Mori Shatar had laughed and said, finally, a worthy challenge. They had defeated the invaders not through superior technology, but through pure stubborn refusal to give up. They were making the other species uncomfortable, Jinho realized. Their way of thinking was spreading. Other civilizations were starting to adopt human-like attitudes toward adversity. And that terrified the council leadership, Thiska agreed. They were afraid their orderly, peaceful civilization would become infected with this dangerous optimism. The final document was a psychological evaluation that made Jin Ho laugh out loud. It described the Kethmori Shatar as dangerously resilient and psychologically contagious. The report recommended immediate isolation before their aggressive hopefulness could spread to other species. Meanwhile, Captain Taman was receiving his own shocking news. Wu Jin had made a discovery while analyzing human genetic data for the Council's Science Committee. "Captain, you need to see this," Wu Jin said, bursting into Taemin's quarters. "I've been comparing human DNA to the genetic samples other species provided. We're not from Earth." "What do you mean we're not from Earth?" "I mean our genetic structure shows signs of modification. Someone designed us to survive on Earth specifically. Our resistance to radiation, our ability to adapt to different climates, our psychological resilience, it's all been enhanced." Wu Jin pulled up a holographic display showing human genetic structure. "Look at these markers. They're artificial. Someone took a base species and modified them to survive on the worst possible world. Modified them for what purpose? I think someone wanted to create the ultimate survivors. Beings who could live through anything and come out stronger." That evening, the human delegation met in secret to share their discoveries. The picture they put together was incredible and frightening. "We're not newcomers to the galaxy," Ambassador So Young said, summarizing what they had learned. "We're the descendants of a species that was so psychologically powerful, it scared the entire Galactic Council. They tried to kill us by sending us to Earth," Hana added. "But instead of dying, we adapted and thrived. And now we're back," Taman concluded. "The question is, what do we do with this information?" Dr. Mi Young spoke up. "We do what humans have always done. We use it to make things better." Jin Ho looked around at his teammates. "Tomorrow I'm going to show Chancellor Vorthak what we've found. It's time the galaxy learned the truth about humanity." "Are you sure that's wise?" So Young asked. "This information could cause panic." "Maybe," Jin Ho replied. "But hiding who we are hasn't worked out well for anyone so far. It's time the galaxy remembered what they tried so hard to forget." Outside their quarters, the monitoring stations around Earth continued their ancient watch, finally detecting the return of the species they had been built to observe. After 50,000 years of silent vigil, they began transmitting again, sending a message that would soon reach the Council. The nameless ones had survived, and they were coming home. The Council chamber had never been so quiet. Ambassador So Young Kim stood at the center of the massive room, surrounded by representatives of 847 different species, all waiting to hear humanity's final petition for membership. What they were about to learn would change everything. Chancellor Vorthak's crystal form flashed with impatient colors. "Sol 3 inhabitants, you have had sufficient time to prove your worth to this council. Present your final argument for membership or accept rejection." So Young looked up at the towering alien leader and smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Honored Chancellor, before we begin, I believe there's been a mistake in our identification. We are not Sol 3 inhabitants. We are humans from Earth, but more importantly, we are the people you used to call Kethmori Shatar." The reaction was immediate and electric. Hundreds of aliens began talking at once in languages that filled the chamber with a chaos of sounds. Some delegates stood up, others backed away, and a few actually tried to leave the chamber. Chancellor Vorthak's crystals went completely dark for several seconds before blazing back to life in angry red. "That name is forbidden. Those beings are extinct. You will not speak such lies in this chamber." "Are they lies?" So Young asked calmly. She gestured to Jin Ho, who stepped forward with a data tablet containing everything they had discovered in the archives. 51,000 years ago, Jin Ho announced, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. The Galactic Council made a decision. They took a species known for their psychological resilience and sent them to die on the harshest world they could find. The main display screens around the chamber lit up with images from the ancient documents. Council members who could read the old languages began translating for those who couldn't. The word spread quickly. The humans were claiming to be the legendary nameless ones. The world was designated as unsuitable for any known form of life. Jin Ho continued. It had extreme weather, dangerous geology, and aggressive predator species. It was perfect for extinction. They called it the final solution to the problem of dangerous optimism. More documents appeared on the screens: genetic modification records, monitoring station blueprints, psychology reports that described the Keth Mori Shatar as infectiously hopeful and dangerously resilient. Counselor Vex Na, the floating jellyfish-like creature, spoke up in a trembling voice. If this is true, then you are the species from the old stories. The ones who laughed at disasters and sang in battle. The ones who turned suffering into strength? We are, So Young confirmed. And we survived. We thrived. We turned your death world into our home. Hana stepped forward, her military bearing obvious to every species in the chamber. While we've been here playing diplomatic games, Earth's military has been tracking your monitoring stations. We've known for decades that someone was watching us. We just waited until we were ready to say hello. Captain Taman activated his communication device. The main screen showed a live feed from Earth's orbit, where a fleet of human warships had just decloaked around the ancient monitoring stations. The Resilience, Phoenix Rising, Undaunted, and 37 other ships are currently inspecting your surveillance equipment, Taman announced. We've been preparing for this day since we first detected your watchers. The council chamber erupted in panic. Species that had legends about the Keth Mori Shatar were terrified. Others were confused, demanding translations and explanations. A few seemed excited, as if they were meeting celebrities. Chancellor Vorthak raised himself to his full towering height.
Even if your claims are true, you were exiled for good reason.
Your psychological patterns are dangerous to galactic stability. You spread chaos and reckless hope wherever you go. Dr. Mi Young stepped forward. Is hope really so dangerous? Look at what we've accomplished. Your ancestors sent us to Earth to die, but we turned it into a garden. We've ended most of our wars. We've cured diseases. We've learned to work together despite our differences. And we've done it all while maintaining the one thing that terrifies you, Wu Jin added. We still believe tomorrow can be better than today, no matter how bad things get. Hyejin spoke up from her position near the delegation. Over the past 2 months, I've been working with several species on psychological adaptation techniques. The methods that help humans survive trauma and hardship can help other species too. We're not a plague, we're a cure. The chamber was still chaotic, but some order was beginning to return. Species representatives were forming groups, discussing what this revelation meant. The humans could see fear in some faces, curiosity in others, and something that looked like hope in a few. Chancellor Vorthak's crystals flashed rapidly through different colors. Your survival does not grant you automatic membership in our council. You were exiled for corrupting other species with your dangerous philosophy. What philosophy? So Young asked. The belief that problems can be solved? The idea that suffering can make us stronger rather than destroy us? The conviction that there's always something worth fighting for? Yes, the Chancellor replied coldly. Those exact beliefs. They are incompatible with peaceful coexistence. Ambassador Zephys, the Cathera representative who had become fascinated with human horror movies, stood up in his section. Chancellor, with respect, I disagree. This human culture has taught my people that fear can be faced rather than avoided. We have become stronger because of their influence. Other voices began joining in. Species that had interacted with the human delegation started speaking about positive changes they had experienced. The spread of what Chancellor Vorthak called dangerous hope was already beginning. You see? The Chancellor said angrily. It begins again. The infection spreads. You cannot help yourselves. You're right, So Young admitted. We can't help sharing hope with others. We can't help believing that things can get better. We can't help turning disasters into opportunities. That's who we are. That's who we've always been. She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many delegates as possible. 50,000 years ago, you tried to kill us because you were afraid of what we might become. But look what we became anyway. We turned your death sentence into our greatest achievement. Captain Taman activated another communication link. This time the screens showed scenes from Earth. Cities, farms, forests, oceans full of life. Humans working together to solve problems, help each other, and build a better world. This is what dangerous optimism looks like, Taman said. This is what happens when a species refuses to give up hope. We could have spent 50,000 years planning revenge. Instead, we spent it learning to be better. The Chancellor was quiet for a long time, cycling through colors that meant deep thought in his species. Finally, he spoke again. What do you want from us? The same thing we wanted when we arrived, So Young replied. Membership in the galactic community, trade, cooperation, friendship. And if we refuse? So Young's smile returned, but this time it was genuinely warm. Then we'll keep doing what we've always done. We'll survive. We'll thrive. We'll spread hope to anyone who wants it. The only difference is whether you'll be part of that future or just watching it happen. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than many expected. Some species voted against humanity out of fear. Others voted in favor, because they wanted to learn from human resilience. But the deciding votes came from species that had already begun changing because of human influence. When Chancellor Vorthak announced the results, his crystal form was a color that meant resigned acceptance. By a margin of 12 votes, the species known as humans, formerly designated Kethmori Shatar, are granted full membership in the Galactic Council. The chamber erupted again, but this time it was celebration mixed with worry. Some species cheered, others looked terrified. A few seemed to be planning their exit strategies. As the human delegation left the chamber, Jin Ho turned to This Ka, who had been watching from the archives section. "Thank you for helping us find the truth," he said. The bird-like alien's feathers were ruffled with excitement. "Thank you for bringing the old stories back to life. I think the galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place." Outside the station, human ships were already arriving to begin their first official patrols as council members. On Earth, celebrations were beginning as news of their acceptance spread around the world. But perhaps most importantly, on dozens of different worlds, alien species were beginning to ask themselves a new question. What if tomorrow really could be better than today? 6 months after the revelation that shook the galaxy, Captain Tae-Min Park stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching his fleet patrol the outer rim territories. His ship was no longer alone. The human vessel's Resilience, Phoenix Rising, and Undaunted moved alongside him, their crews working with alien partners who had requested joint operations. The galaxy's reaction to humanity's return had been as complex as the humans themselves. Some species had immediately requested military cooperation, desperate to learn how humans stayed calm during emergencies. Others had tried to quarantine entire systems to prevent psychological contamination. Most fell somewhere in between, fascinated and terrified in equal measure. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Park, "Junseo from the communication station. We're receiving a distress call from the Veltara system. Their colony ship is caught in an asteroid field and they're requesting human assistance." Taemin smiled. It was the 15th such request this month. Word had spread quickly that humans were exceptionally good at impossible rescues. "Set course for Veltara. Send word to the Phoenix Rising to join us." As his ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, Taemin thought about how much had changed. The humans were no longer petitioners seeking membership. They were full council members with all the rights and responsibilities that came with it. More importantly, they had been classified as apex survival species, a designation created specifically for them. Meanwhile, back on Nexus Prime, Ambassador So Young was dealing with the political aftermath of humanity's revelation. Her office had become the busiest diplomatic center on the station, with alien representatives constantly requesting meetings. "Ambassador Kim," said Counselor Thane, the reptilian Draknor who had become obsessed with human war poetry. "My government wishes to formalize a cultural exchange program. We want to learn your techniques for maintaining morale during difficult times." So Young nodded. "We'd be happy to help. But remember, our methods might seem strange to your people at first. We are prepared. Our military commanders have been studying your historical battles. They want to understand how human soldiers could advance while singing, or how they found humor in desperate situations. This was happening across the galaxy. Species that had never experienced optimism were trying to learn it. Military academies were adding courses on human style, resilience. Artists were experimenting with hope-based art forms that emphasized overcoming adversity. Dr. Heejin Nam had become the most requested psychologist in council space. Her office on Nexus Prime was always full of aliens trying to understand human mental processes. "Dr. Nam," said her current patient, a crystalline being from the Shard Collective, "my people are having difficulty with the concept you call gallows humor. How can suffering be funny?" Heejin smiled patiently. She had explained this concept hundreds of times to different species. "It's not that suffering is funny. It's that we use humor to cope with suffering. When we laugh at our problems, they seem smaller and more manageable. But laughing at problems does not solve them. No, but it gives us the strength to keep working on solutions even when things look hopeless. The crystalline alien flickered with confusion. This makes no logical sense, yet it clearly works for your species. Our philosophers are calling it weaponized optimism. Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. Jinho and Thiska had established the first interspecies historical research center, working to restore humanity's true history to the galactic archives. They had discovered that human influence had been systematically erased from thousands of historical records. "Look at this," Jinho said, showing his alien partner a newly discovered document. The cure for the Zentari plague wasn't discovered by the Malaxians like the history books say. It was developed by human researchers working with Malaxian doctors. Thiska's feathers ruffled with excitement. And here, the defense of the Kylian system against the Void Swimmers. The official records credit the Draknor military, but these personal accounts mention human tactical advisors who refused to accept defeat even when all hope seemed lost. They were rewriting galactic history, one document at a time, showing how human influence had shaped major events for thousands of years before their exile. But not everyone was happy with humanity's return. The Isolation Coalition, made up of species that feared human psychological influence, was growing stronger. They held regular protests on Nexus Prime, demanding that humans be quarantined again. "They're spreading their dangerous thinking to our children," declared Vorthax Prime, a member of the coalition and the Chancellor's cousin. "Young crystallines are starting to believe they can overcome obstacles instead of accepting their limitations. This is chaos." Ambassador So Young found herself defending humanity's right to exist almost daily. "We're not forcing our philosophy on anyone," she said during one particularly heated council session. "We share our culture freely, just like every other species does." "But your culture is infectious," replied Counselor Nexka, a spider-like being who led the coalition. "Other species cannot resist adopting your dangerous optimism. You should be contained for the safety of galactic civilization." "Dangerous optimism," repeated Captain Hana Cho, who had been promoted to admiral and was now head of human military operations. "I like that phrase. It's exactly what we are." Hana was currently aboard the Undaunted, leading a joint task force to investigate reports of void swimmer activity in the Outer Rim. Her crew was half human, half alien, species that had specifically requested to serve alongside humans. "Admiral," called out her Draknor tactical officer, "the enemy fleet is twice our size. Logic suggests retreat." "Logic suggests a lot of things," Hana replied with a grin. "But we're humans. We don't retreat from impossible odds. We call them interesting challenges." The battle that followed would become legendary. Human ships, supported by alien allies who had learned to think like humans, turned a hopeless situation into a stunning victory. They didn't win through superior technology or numbers, but through sheer refusal to accept defeat. Dr. Woojin Lee had perhaps the most important job of all. As humanity's chief xenobiologist, he was studying how human psychological traits might be safely shared with other species. His research station orbited a world where volunteers from dozens of different alien species were learning human-style thinking. "The key," he explained to his research team, "is gradual exposure. Most species can learn optimism and resilience, but they need time to adapt. Too much human-style thinking too fast can cause psychological damage." His work was creating the first universal techniques for building hope and resilience across species lines. Governments across the galaxy were funding his research, desperate to learn how to make their people more adaptable and strong. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity was preparing for its new role as the galaxy's teachers of survival. Schools were developing programs to train young humans as interspecies counselors and advisors. The job market for hope specialists and resilience consultants was exploding. Captain Taman received regular reports about these changes as his fleet continued its patrols. The Veltara rescue had been successful, of course. Humans had guided the alien colony ship through the asteroid field using techniques that seemed impossible to other species, but made perfect sense to beings raised on a death world. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth. Admiral Kim wants to speak with you." The holographic image of Admiral Kim appeared on the bridge. Behind him, Taman could see the lights of New Geneva, humanity's new capital for galactic affairs. Captain, I have new orders for you. The Council has requested human assistance with a crisis in the Andorian sector. 3 different species are facing simultaneous disasters: plague, invasion, and solar instability. They're calling it an impossible situation. Taman laughed. Perfect. We'll head there immediately. Captain, Admiral Kim said seriously. This won't be easy, even for us. Admiral, we spent 50,000 years turning the worst planet in the galaxy into paradise. We've got this. As the human fleet changed course toward the Andorian sector, Taman reflected on how much the galaxy had changed. Fear of humanity was still there, but it was being balanced by something stronger: hope. Species that had spent millennia accepting their limitations were learning to overcome them. Civilizations that had given up on solving ancient problems were trying again. The infection of human optimism was spreading exactly as the old council had feared. The difference was that now, most of the galaxy was grateful for the infection. In his private quarters that night, Jinho was working on the final entry for humanity's restored historical record. It would replace the old classification that had called them dangerous and infectious. The new entry read, Humanity, designation, Keth Mori Shatar, the Forge of the Unbreakable. A species that transforms adversity into advantage and finds light in the deepest darkness. They are the children of the impossible, the singers in the void, the ones who laugh at fate and make tomorrow better than today. Approach with respect and openness, for they carry the rarest gift in the galaxy, the absolute certainty that no situation is truly hopeless. Outside his window, the stars shone the same as always. But for the first time in 50,000 years, TT,